here is the most satisfying thing about every single DBD killer. Obviously, we're gonna have different opinions, but I'd love to hear what you guys think down in the comments below. Trapper. When a survivor steps in a random eerie stone trap in the middle of nowhere. This is the most satisfying thing to happen for Trapper because not only are you getting a trap kill, which is pretty rare, even though I know that's just because I'm bad at this killer, but it's a trap that was randomly activated by your eerie add-on, and since you never picked it up, it's just spawned in the middle of nowhere, so survivors just don't expect it there. I can probably count on more than one hand how many times I've died to an eerie stone trap in the middle of nowhere, but that's besides the point. Wraith, using your lunge speed increase out of a cloak to just barely hit the survivor before the pallet stuns you. This happens way more often than you'd expect, but it's always so satisfying to just barely hit the edge of their hitbox right before you get stunned. I love the speed burst you get out of a cloak because it makes the mind games like way faster, and you have to think way faster on both sides, and this allows you to get those hits just a split second before you get stunned. Hillbilly, getting a cross map snipe or a curve. These are obviously two very different things, but they're both satisfying in their own right. Cross map snipes, I would say, are less skill based and more just luck based if a survivor appears where you're going, but you can obviously get skill based snipes based on, you know, information that you have with barbecue or with different stealth perks helping you. But curves are probably much more satisfying because they take a lot more skill to pull off, especially if you're doing, you know, the 360s and 180s that, you know, a lot of extremely good billies do around cars and such. Not only is it satisfying because it's hard to control that sensitivity, it's also satisfying the fact that you were able to use your chainsaw without bumping into absolutely nothing. Nurse, I'm gonna say getting a single max blink hit on Larry's. Everyone knows that Nurse is obviously the best killer in the game, but if you bring her to Larry's, she is absolutely awful. Almost every single blink that you have to do is a complete guess because she really struggles with line of sight, and because there's so many rooms and so many walls that block line of sight, it's very difficult for you to get hits as Nurse. But every once in a while, you'll get a single blink that's at the maximum distance, and you'll go through like 7 walls and land perfectly on a survivor and hit them. And oh my god, it's the most satisfying thing ever. Myers, when you have tombstone piece and survivors are teabagging you at the exit gate. Unfortunately, this doesn't happen as you get higher into MMR, but at low MMRs, when you were able to do this because survivors didn't know what tombstone piece was, it was the most satisfying thing ever because the survivors are trying to be toxic and teabag at you, but then you just go up to them and you grab them and you kill them, and it's hilarious. For those of you who don't know, tombstone piece is the add-on that allows you to mori survivors when you're in tier 3, as long as you can get close to them. So obviously, I'm sure you can imagine how that would work at the exit gate. Tag, when you get like 3 or 4 perfectly timed chain hits together, where a survivor triggers the first one, you teleport to them, and as you hit them, a survivor triggers another one, you teleport to them and get another hit, and you just do that 3 or 4 times. This is so rare, but it's so satisfying because you basically just ran through the entire team like a legion, but way faster. Doctor, this is so specific, but it's when you do the shack pallet tech. Basically, this is when the survivor is inside of the shack and they have the pallet down, and you're on the outside of the window. Something you could do is shock the survivor from the outside, and right when your shock ends, you vault. It'll block them from vaulting the pallet, and then you can get the hit. This doesn't happen often, but it is so hilarious, and you feel like such a god when you pull it off. Huntress, I don't even need to answer this one. Getting a hit from across the map when you have no idea where the survivor is the most satisfying thing in this game. I think it's single-handedly the most satisfying thing in this game. I think my most iconic cross map was in my 2v8 video when I just randomly threw a hatchet midair and it hit someone. It was insane. Bubba, when you pull off a successful moonwalk chainsaw hit. I don't know if you've ever tried to moonwalk and do red stain mine games while using your chainsaw, but it is really difficult and kind of hard to control. It has this weird like movement sway to it, so it's kind of confusing, along with the really bad hitboxes on a ton of maps. So being able to pull off one of these moonwalk mind games is so satisfying, especially when you just barely hit the survivor right before you get stunned, kind of like what I mentioned with Wraith. Freddy, lunging before a survivor throws a fake pallet and hitting them through it. This is satisfying because you know that your body's just going to go right through the pallet and hit the survivor. And of course, it's absolutely hilarious to see this happen. And it's nice to know that your fake pallets actually did something. But I do want to give an honorable mention to the finger knife wiggle animation after hitting a survivor. The sounds that it makes is so satisfying, and I don't know why, but I love it. It's music to my ears. Pig. I know this is a basic vanilla answer, but I gotta give it to head pops. Specifically when you're not trying to get head pops. It's so satisfying when you're having a really rough match and you have like no kills and there's 1 gen left, and then all of a sudden you see that skull symbol pop up on your HUD. It's kind of a rare occurrence, which makes it all the more satisfying. Clown. Hitting cross map bottles. Cross map bottles don't exactly help you very much, but there's still really satisfying to pull off. You'll see throughout this video that I really like cross maps, but still there's like a lot of cross maps that you can hit on certain maps where you perfectly thread the needle through trees and over loop walls and stuff and hit a survivor. And when you perfectly throw a bottle really far, right exactly where you wanted it to go, you just feel so good at the clown. Spirit, finding a survivor just based on the tiniest blade of grass moving. For those of you who don't know, even though the survivors become invisible when you're phasing as Spirit, you can still see them moving the grass, and sometimes survivors will walk around the map and have fixated and stuff, so you can't actually see their scratch marks. But when you find a survivor that's walking just based on the smallest movement of grass, it's so satisfying, and you just feel like the most observant, like, anime main character ever. Legion. This one's also pretty basic, but I'm gonna say getting all 4 Feral Frenzy hits so that you can get the down on the next person you hit. If you're playing against a good team, this almost never happens because they split up, but on the off chance that it does, it feels so nice because you just get a ton of pressure and you're going really, really fast because you've already hit 3 previous people. I feel like this killer is so basic that there's not a lot of satisfying things that can happen besides maybe with like some add-ons, so that's why I'm giving it to this. Plague. Can you guess what I'm about to say? Yes, it is cross maps. Cross maps are probably the hardest thing to do on the Plague because the physics of her puke just makes it really complex. So it's so nice to hear a survivor go down or get injured when you shoot your puke way over some walls really far away. It's especially satisfying when you know, just based on game knowledge, exactly where a window spawn is and are able to predict that the survivor is going to go there without even seeing it. Ghostface. When you 99 3 or 4 people because you pulled off a successful flank. This is one of the rarest things as Ghostface because people don't usually split up into 3 or 4 people. But even when you're able to stalk 2 or more people without them seeing you and get them 99, you just feel like you're fully set up for later in the match. So I'm sure you can imagine how it feels when you 99 3 or even 4 survivors. Demogorgon. This one is really specific, but it happens a lot more than you think. There's this trick that I like to do when a survivor is waiting at the exit gate. You basically get to the exit gate and you stare at them for a couple of seconds because they're just going to be waiting there looking at you. And then you turn and leave. Because Demo has so much like quote unquote character in the way his animations look, they think you're actually leaving. But then as you get behind the wall, you start your shred, then moonwalk, turn your camera and shred towards the survivor. And 75% of the time, the survivor is not close enough to the exit gate, so you're able to pick them up and it's hilarious. Oni. I was originally going to give this to hitting crazy flicks, but after a while that starts to become not as satisfying. So I'm actually going to give this to when there's a giant blood pool somewhere and you're just able to suck all of it up and get your power instantly. Seeing a giant pool of blood orbs is always so satisfying because you know that you're going to instantly get your power. Plus the sounds of all of them being picked up is great. Deathslinger. Getting shots through small cracks. Being able to perfectly envision exactly when a survivor is going to pass through a small crack in a wall without being able to see them makes you feel like an actual professional. And being able to have enough time to reel the survivor in from around the wall and hit them is even more satisfying. But it's also just nice, even if you're able to see the survivor, being able to get those shots through cracks. Like the first thing that comes to mind is the top story balcony of Dead Dog Saloon of the main building. Those little cracks in the railing you can shoot through, and it's always a fun game for the survivors trying to dodge it between those cracks and you trying to hit them. Pyramid Head. I'm gonna give this to double hits, whether that be when you have a stealth perk on and you get a double hit on survivors working on a gen because they don't know you're there, or when you double hit a survivor that's getting unhooked or uncaged, or even just regular double hits, which are super rare. It's not often that you're able to get 2 hits with 1 use of your power, so of course it's gonna be satisfying. Blight. I'm gonna say when you're able to perfectly thread the needle on indoor maps to get a successful hit, it's super frustrating to be on like Larry's or RPD or some sort of indoor map where you basically can't use your power properly. So when you're able to use your power and actually pull it off successfully, it feels so nice and you actually feel like you're good at this killer. This is already hard on mouse and keyboard. I can't even imagine how difficult it is on controller. Twins. Again, another cross map, but specifically hitting a far pounce from a higher story area. The reason I say specifically a higher story area is because you technically go further since you're, coming off of a high height. I don't play the twins, so I actually have never done this in my life, but if you check out Lynxie's channel, she has a ton of these insane hits and they look so satisfying to pull off. Trickster. Hitting that last knife through a small crack or window or with a crazy long shot or prediction throw. Really anything where that last knife is like a single tap. This is satisfying because not only does it break up the monotony of just spamming knives at someone until they, take an injure state, but it really shows your skill with this character and map knowledge. Being able to not only aim this last knife perfectly where you want it to go, but also timing it perfectly with where the survivor is gonna be, kind of like Deathslinger shots through small cracks, feels extremely rewarding. Nemesis. This, of course, this has got to be zoning a survivor into a zombie to get a double hit. Like, it's so funny, even if it's a detriment to you to like spend the extra time trying to zone them into the zombie, it's still really fun to pull off, and it's just hilarious because there's quite literally nothing that the survivors can do. Well, I guess the survivor could just take a single hit and leave, but you know, they don't do that. For Pinhead, I gotta give this to finding the box on your own volition. Being able to understand box spawns is a very high level requirement for this killer that'll make you significantly better at playing this killer. But even if you don't know how the spawns work and you just randomly come across it, it feels like you just got a significant buff in your match, so it's always nice to find the box. Artist, damaging or downing survivors across the map. We got another cross map. But this one is a little more interesting because you first have to hit them with the crows by only using 1 or maybe 2 crows depending on their distance, and then you have to hit them again with another crow once their cooldown is up before they've repelled the other crows. And doing that from the other side of the map, being able to pressure these survivors from a completely far away distance is so nice. And it's really fun to see that injure or down, especially when you don't even know where the survivor is and you just did the shotgun formation. Onryo, getting a hit with your lunge speed after teleporting. I feel like most people would say being able to use your small mori, but I actually find this to be a lot more satisfying. Survivors aren't usually close enough to a TV for you to get this hit, so when it does happen, it's very, very fun because you get a surprisingly long speed increase after teleporting, and pairing that with your lunge speed makes you zoom so fast. And it's also satisfying knowing that you teleported exactly where a survivor is because it just kind of shows your skill expression and knowledge and awareness of the match. For Dredge, this has got to be teleporting to a survivor in a locker. This never happens because A, why would a survivor get into a locker in the first place? And B, why would a survivor get into a locker against a Dredge? But since you can see the auras of the lockers opening and closing while you're teleporting, if you're somehow, by some stretch of the imagination, able to pull a survivor out of a locker by teleporting to it, it is so nice to pull off, and it's super, super rare. Wesker, doing a bait dash moonwalk thing and then spinning your camera to dash in a different direction. This makes no sense, but hopefully you can understand based on the gameplay. You like pretend to go in one direction and then moonwalk and just barely turn your camera so that you know, go into a different direction. It's kind of like the Demogorgon thing where you bait going in one direction and then turn and then dash in a different direction. So you kind of snake eye the survivor, so to speak, so that they feel like they need to go towards one direction, but you're actually coming in that same direction. I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever, but it's always nice to pull it off. Knight, I'm going to give this to insta-breaking a pallet with the card effects and then getting a hit because of it. You can break pallets in chase surprisingly quickly, and a lot of times survivors don't have enough time to get to another loop, so it's always very satisfying to quickly and efficiently pull this off. Skull Merchant, I don't play the Skull Merchant because I don't find her very fun, so I would assume getting a stealth grab on a survivor while undetectable after releasing a drone would be pretty satisfying, but I don't even know if that's feasible, so I could not tell you. If one of the 3 Skull Merchant players are out there, please comment below what the most satisfying thing about playing her is. I'm curious. Singularity. Just winning in general. This is the hardest killer I've ever had to use in my life. This is the only killer where my win-loss ratio is negative. If you're able to even get 2 kills with this killer, I'm so proud of you. The learning curve is absolutely insane, and Singularity is so hard to use. All of those people that are really good at Singularity, I applaud you. Xenomorph, using your knowledge of hitboxes to flick hit a survivor over an obstacle. For those of you who don't know, the hitbox of the tail has like multiple active intervals over the course of a couple milliseconds. So it's not just one single hitbox, it's a few, and it moves with your camera. So you could do things like swing your tail over an object and bring your camera down a little bit to make the hitbox point down. Being able to apply the skill and knowledge to your gameplay and actually successfully use it to get a hit is very, very satisfying. Chucky, I want to give it to just getting a scamper hit at the last possible second, but I feel like that's too basic, and I've had a lot of basic ones on this list, so I'm going to go with something a little more specific, and it's when survivors are trying to body block another survivor that's injured, and you're able to successfully dodge and weave through them and slide off of them and hit the survivor they were trying to body block. This just feels so good because in these situations, you have to down that survivor to be able to gain pressure, and being able to dodge all of the people trying to body block makes it feel like you still have a chance to win or get a kill or 2 or whatever you're trying to do. For the unknown, I wonder. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it is cross maps. What a surprise. But specifically, getting double hit cross maps. Since this killer has an explosion radius, you can hit more than one person at the same exact time. So going for those insane mortar shots where they can't even see you is so satisfying, and being able to hit more than one, you just feel like a god. Like you're just so good at this game. I absolutely love this killer, and if you haven't played him yet, I would highly recommend it. And last but not least, Vecna. I have no idea because I didn't download the PTB. Let me know in the comments below what you think is the most satisfying thing about playing every killer, or just your killer mains, and I really think you'll enjoy this video on screen. It's one of my favorites, so go check it out and see if you like it.